Hey everyone, it's Kylie from Pained Wing. In today's video, I'm going to be demonstrating how I draw a nuthatch, and then also I'm going to be painting with watercolors. I'm going to start off my sketch by using an H pencil. This initial sketch is just going to be a rough layout of the drawing. I'm going to be using basic shapes to sketch out the piece. For example, using a circle for the head. While sketching, I try to sketch as light as possible, just in case I need to erase anything. Now I'm going to go back over my initial sketch and just redefine some of the areas using a darker pencil. This sketch looks good enough for me to begin painting. I'm going to start off by painting the eye using my raw umber, which is a warm brown color. I'll be using a wet on dry technique, and also be using a small brush to stay in control. Now for the beak, I'll be using my Paynes Grey color. Using a small brush, I'll first outline the beak. And then I'll use a larger round brush, this here is a number 4, and blend it out. For this top portion of the head, I'll be using a similar technique as I did for the beak. Drawing out an outline with the Paynes Grey and then blending it out using a wet brush. Here I'm adding a little extra paint now that the beak is dry. Here I'm adding a mixture of Prussian Blue and Paynes Grey to the back of the head. Now while those areas dry, we're going to be moving to the red breast of the nuthatch. For this area, I'll be using burnt sienna. And I'll also be using a slightly larger round brush. This here is a number 10 by Princeton. For this area, I'm using a smaller brush. I'm using a smaller brush to get the fine details of the feathers. Now I'm going to be filling in more of the area below the wing with the burnt sienna paint. You'll notice that my wash is uneven, which I actually prefer of my paintings. I think it adds some depth and texture. Here I'm just adding a little splotch of my blue paint. And then I'll move back to my number 4 brush. Here I'm drawing some edges of feathers. Now I'll be allowing this area to dry. You can either wait for the paint to dry or you can use a blow dryer to speed it up. Again, using my Paynes Grey paint with a small brush, I'll be outlining this area of the feathers. Creating an outline first helps so your paint doesn't bleed into other areas, which is why I use this technique a lot unless I'm trying to create something more abstract and loose. Now I'll be going back into the eye and the areas around the nuthatch's face with my Paynes Grey. You can also use black paint for this portion, but I just use a saturated amount of gray paint. Here I'm adding a little extra blue paint, and then blending in the gray with it. Here I'm again using a mixture of the Prussian Blue and the Paynes Grey paint. For this area, I'm not going to be doing every single detail, I'm just kind of creating an abstract wash. I'm not overthinking this process, just kind of laying down paint and seeing what happens. And I'll be sprinkling in some salt and letting it dry. Here I'm adding a saturated amount of dark blue paint, and then I'm going to allow this area to dry. A little bit of green paint mixed into my blue paint on accident, so that's why it looks a little bit more teal than blue. I have a tendency to have a pretty messy palette, so that's why my colors sometimes look a little off. Now I'll be using a fluffy round brush to create some tail feathers. Now using a small brush dipped in Paynes Grey, and be drawing out some feather details. I'm not going to paint on every single feather, just a few to kind of give the impression that there are feathers here. That's why I like this style of painting, is you don't have to paint on every single detail. You kind of let the eye just imagine what's going on. Now I'll be adding in an extra splotch of blue paint, and then the painting is complete. Thank you so much for watching as I paint this nuthatch, and I'll also have a drawing template for this painting on Patreon later this month. Thanks again, have a great rest of your day.